Today again we will implement another array example. But first we will understand what is the problem statement. Then we will try to understand what is the expected output, and then we will implement this program step by step. So as you can see here, first it says that enter n student roll number and age in two array. Okay, so this example is bit combinations of few logics. Okay, so here the first statement says enter n student roll number. N means the number that can be chosen by user, how many student he want or she want. Okay, so based on that, he or she basically enter the roll number and age of that student, and we have to collect that in two arrays. Then we have to print all the student roll number and age. Then from that age we have to find out what is the maximum and what is the minimum, and based on that we have to print the older student roll number and age, and also the younger student roll number and age. And finally we have to also print the average age of all the student. Okay, so this is our problem statement. Now check how it will be look, or what is the expected output. So I'm trying to show you what is the expectations as an output. Okay, so you can see here the system asks enter how many student. Let's say I enter 3 student. Okay, now it says enter student roll number, so that is basically first student roll number, let's say 1. Then if I enter here, so it says student age, so the roll number 1 student age, let's say 10. Again if I enter, so it says the enter student roll number, this is second student, and let's say I enter the roll number 2, and then it's asks student age, let's say I enter a age, let's say 15. Now if I enter here, my student count I have given here 3, so this is my third student, and here the roll number I have set, let's say 3, and enter the student age, let's say it's a 5. Okay, so if I then enter, then the expectation is that from this list it will first print roll number 1 age 10, roll number 2 age 15, roll number 3 age 5. Then from this it will also try to find out what is the minimum age. So definitely roll number 3 is younger and his age is 5, and roll number 2 is older and its age is 15. And the final statement should be the average age of these 3 students. Okay, so let me enter, and you can see it first giving me the printing statement roll number wise age. Then second it says that roll number 2 is older. You can see here roll number 2 is older and his or her age is 15, and roll number 3 is younger, so that's why it says 3 is younger and its age is 5. And finally the average is coming as 10. Okay, so this is basically expectations from this problem statement. So let's check how we can create this program. Now as you can see, I have already created a student max min average age. This is basically my class name, and this is available under com.demo.array package. So let me double click it here. Now you can see that I have already given the exact step or the exact problem statement here. Now what is our first statement? Our first statement is basically enter n student roll number and age in two array. So enter n means we have to first create a variable that is basically n, and we have to collect how many student, right? So let's do that. So here we can create an integer variable, let's say n, and we have to collect the student number. So we have to create a print statement, and once user enter any value that need to be collected under this n, so definitely we need scanner class help. So first we have to create an instance of scanner class, then an statement, then we will try to collect the value under n variable. So how we can do that? So this is basically the syntax, right? So if I then import the exact package, that is basically java.util, then it look like this. So scanner class instance sc, and a print statement enter how many student, and under this n variable I am trying to collect using scanner class next in method. Okay, now our total student count has been collected under n variable. Now what is the next step? So if you check here, our next step is that we have to collect roll number and age in two arrays, right? So we have to first declare an array, and also we have to set the size of the array. Okay, so if you go to this Eclipse again, so we can understand this n basically how many number of students, so that is basically size of that array, right? Now we have to create two array, one for roll number and one for age. Now let's create an array student role, so we know the syntax, and we making the size dynamically that was collected under n variable. Okay, so this is my student role array, okay, where we will try to collect all the roll number of the student. Now the second array should be student age, so the syntax should be something like this: student age, this is an array, new float, and again the size is n. I am making the student roll number int and age as float. Now my array declarations is done and also size setup is done. Now we have to collect the data, right? So for that we have to create an iterations logic, that is basically int I start from 0, that is basically 0 index, and less than n means total number of student, right? So start from 0, that's why less than n, then I plus plus. Okay, and here we have to pass two statement to collect student roll number and student age. So first create two print statement, and then we will try to collect the value under student role array and student age array. So our first statement is enter student roll number, and our second statement is enter student age. Now where we collect student roll number, that is basically student role, this array. Okay, so we can use something like this, and then we have to take the help of scanner class, right? That is basically instance sc, so sc dot, and you can see the roll number, this is basically a integer type, so we will use next int. Now here student role, and it should be 0 1 2 3 4, so we will use this I, and it will automatically add the value like 0 1 2 3 4. So each iterations it will take the student roll number. Okay, similar way for student age we will use the student age array. Okay, and syntax will be same. Here we will use the index, that is basically I, and it will automatically increment based on the iterations, and finally using the scanner class instance we will try to collect the value of the age, and that is basically float type, so we will use next float. Now you can see here that our array declarations is done, limit setup or size setup is also done, and finally using these iterations we are already trying to collect the roll number and student age under these two array. So our next statement is that we have to print all the student roll number and age, right? So we have already collected that one, now we have to print that. Okay, so how we can do that? So again we will use the same for loop iterations. Okay, and that is basically the next for loop, and here we will try to print the student roll number and age. So how we can do that? So we can create a print statement something like this, let's say roll number, and here student role, that is basically our array, and I am giving the I value if in each iterations, like so you can see here that here we basically collect the value, and here on each iterations I will be increment 0 1 2 3 4, and that value which basically we collected, that will be printed here with additions comment, that is basically roll number colon. Similarly age will be printed on the same line. Here I am taking the same array student age, and this index you can see that each iterations it will automatically increment from 0 to n minus 1, right? So this way we can basically print student age and roll number in a single line, and for more beautifications we can create some print statement here like this. So I am giving a extra line, then on the top of this printing statement it says that student role and age. Now if I save it and try to run it, let's check how it will be look like. So let's enter only two student. Okay, student roll number 1 and its age, let's say 12, student roll number 2 and its age, let's say 15. So if I enter here, so you can see the first statement it's coming something like this. So before that here it's a single line added, and then student roll number, this statement is coming, and finally these two iterations is shows roll number, then roll number 1 that we basically put, and its age is basically 12, so we enter the same thing. Then for roll number 2, basically here coming roll number, the second iteration it gets 2 and age is basically 15. So this way we are able to print whatever the value we collected in our first for loop. Okay, same has been printed here. Now what is our next aim? So our next aim is to create the logic so that we can find out the older and younger student. That is basically whatever the age we provided, we have to find the maximum age and minimum age, and not only find out the maximum and minimum age, we also have to print them based on the roll number of that student, right? So let's check that how we can do that. So you can see here in our first for loop iteration we are trying to collect the student age. Okay, and on the same index means on the same I value, we are also trying to collect the roll number. Now from these iterations or from under this for loop, we have to create some logic so that we can find out what is the maximum age and what is the minimum age of student. Okay, so if you recall our very previous class where we already did, finding out the maximum and minimum between n given number, right? So same type of logic we will try to implement here, because our array is nothing but it's a concept, and the logic will be the same that we already learned in our very previous 20 days challenge. So first we have to create two float variable, that is basically max and min, where max basically try to fetch the maximum age or the older age, and min basically try to calculate or fetch the minimum age. And very initial phase we are trying to make both as 0 with initial value. Okay, now where we are collecting the age, so under this for loop we are actually trying to collecting the age. Okay, so if it's a first iteration, that's mean first time you are entering any student age, so that time we will try to make our max and min value with that particular age, because currently we are trying to use the first iteration, that's mean one student, and if it is one student, that's mean he is basically maximum one and he is also the minimum one. So making the same concept, we can write a if condition so that we can find out it is the first iterations or not. So if I is equal to 0, that's mean if it's the first iterations, then what we will do, we will basically try to make the max variable and min variable both will be set with the age that is basically collected here. Okay, so previously we set it as 0, but if the first iterations going on, then that time we will try to set max and min with the first student age. Now let's say it is not the first iteration, that is basically it's a second iterations or any other iteration. So on that else part, what we will do, we will try to create some logic. If student age means whatever the age added on the second time, third time, or any other iteration that is not the first iteration, that is basically 0, then on that time we will try to check if that age is greater than max. Max means whatever collected on the first time, then the second time, third time. So each time we will try to check the student age basically greater than of that particular max age. Okay, if it is greater than, then we will try to set the max value with that student age. Okay, that's mean it is basically the second, let's say first time it is 5. Okay, second time it is 10. Okay, so that's mean 10 is greater than 5, so that's mean now my max age should be 10, not the 5. So that's why I have given or I have set up the max value with the next student if the next student age is greater than max. Similar way we have to calculate the minimum age as well. Okay, so here we can create a if else conditions, and we can say that if student age, that is basically the next iterations, if that is basically less than minimum, then we can say that minimum is equal to that student age, right? So this is the same logic that we did in our 20 days challenge. Only thing is that we are trying to collect the value with the help of array. Okay, now if you check the problem statement, here it says that we not only need the older or younger, that's mean max and mean only, not our aim. Our aim is also to print the roll number of that particular student who is basically older and who is basically younger. So we anyhow we have to collect the roll number as well for that particular student whose age is younger or older, right? So how we can do that? So as you can see here I am actually trying to collect the maximum value and minimum value, and that is basically coming based on some index, okay, of this for loop. Okay, so let's say when I is basically 5, that time student is the maximum one, and I is 2, that time let's say student is minimum one. Okay, so in this way, using these if else conditions, we can get what is the exact roll number of that student, right? So we can calculate that particular index, or we can store that particular index in some another variable. So let's create to another variable where we have to collect the exact index. So what is that two index type? Once for maximum one and once for minimum one. Okay, so we can create two index, that is basically, and when we are talking about index, definitely it will be a integer type. So I am creating a max age student index and mean age student index. Currently I set it -1 -1. Why, I will explain later, but understand that currently we need two flag type of things which basically track the index of the maximum age and minimum age student. So now if I go to the calculations logic again, so here basically we try to collect the maximum age, right? So here we can also collect the student index, basically that is I. So maximum age student index, I am trying to collect the I value, and similarly for this minimum we can set the minimum age student index, that is basically I. So as I told that if let's say 5, the roll number 5 is basically older student, so I can collect the max value for that student age 5, and I am trying to collect the that index, that is basically 5. Okay, and let's say if the second student whose index is let's say 1, or let's say third student whose index is 2, so he is basically the minimum or younger student, so we are trying to collect that one, let's say it's 2. So on that same time we are trying to collect the index under minimum age student, okay, that is basically 2. Why we need this? Because when we try to print that one, so that time if we know the index, so we can easily calculate what is its roll number. So if we try to fetch student roll number of 2, so we can get the actual roll number. If this is 5, let's say it's set as 5, and we try to collect the student of that index, so we will get the exact roll number. So our index setup is done for maximum and minimum for the next iteration. Next iteration means which is not the first iterations. Okay, but if it's a first iteration, on that time we can try to collect the index for both this max and mean, that is nothing but 0, right? Because you can see here in our first iterations we are trying to collect the max mean, both are the same. Similar way, if max and mean both are same, so we can also use the max index and mean index, both are basically same, that is nothing but I. Here I is basically 0. So now all these cases, my maximum index, minimum index, as well as my max age and mean age, all are now collected. Now as a next step, we can print the maximum age of maximum roll number student. Okay, and how we can do that? So you can see here that very initial phase, our max age student index we set -1, but if any value is inputted, then it can be 0 or maybe greater than 0, but not -1s, right? So similar way we can check if that index is not equal to -1, then we will try to print that one. And what is this? This is basically max age student. So here you can see I have given a print statement roll number, and what is this roll number? Roll number is that array, and index is basically max age student, so that is basically calculated here. You can see here under this for loop, with the if else conditions, we are trying to collect the max age student index, right? And as I told, as an example, let's say it's a index 5. So if it's a index 5 set here, then it will basically try to collect the student roll number of that index 5. Okay, then we say, let's say it's a roll number 6. So roll number 6 is older than other student and his or her age is, again, what is the age? Age is basically the age of that particular index. Okay, so if we try to find out the particular index student age, so again we will get actually this maximum age. Okay, so instead of this we can also print the max, variable value here. That is also the same thing, but we can also print the, because we already understand what is the index of the maximum age student. So if I already get the index, then we can easily calculate using this, two array, and under that if we put the index, we will get the roll number as well as age. Okay, so you can do both the way. You can use student age and index, that is basically max, or you can use here the max value. Okay, so similar way we can print the minimum one as well, and for that we have to write the same type of syntax. Instead of max age student index, here min age student index, then the same type of print statement, roll number, student roll number, and under the index we are trying to use this minimum age student index. And similarly for the age, we use the student age array, and under that minimum age student index. So instead of that, again we can use this minimum variable value, that is also the same thing. So whatever you wish, that can you use, but this print statement actually give you the exact roll number of that student, who is basically older one and who is basically younger one, and what is their age. Okay, so now if I save it and try to run this one, let's check how the result is coming. So here you can see it says enter student number, means how many students. So let's say 4 students. First student roll number 1, age let's say 12. Then second student roll number, then age is let's say 13. Then enter the roll number, let's say roll number 3, age is 14. And enter the roll number, let's say roll number 4, and age is let's say 5. So you can see that maximum age is 14, minimum age is 5, and the maximum age student roll number is 3, and minimum age student roll number is 4. So if I try to enter here, so first it will give me the exact print statement of roll number and age, then older one and the younger one, that is basically roll number 3 and roll number 4. So you can see roll number 3 is the older one and its age is 14, and roll number 4 is basically younger one and his age is basically 5, that is coming here. Now what is the pending statement or pending problem statement we have to implement? That is basically finding out the average age. So if again I go to the code base, so you can see all the step we already did, and the last statement is printing the average student age. Now how we can create the average? So definitely first we have to find out the total, then divided by the number of student. So to find out the total and average, definitely we have to first create some variable, and those are basically float type. So I have created a total float type variable and initialize is value with 0 and a average variable avg. Okay, now where we can calculate this total. So you can see that in this for loop, the first for loop, we are trying to collect the age, right? So each time when we try to collect the age, that time if we use the syntax like total is equal to total plus student age I, means whatever the student age we are trying to fetch here, that will be added every time. Okay, with the total value. Very initial phase total is 0, then second time whatever the age we collected, that will be added here. Third time we will try to add that previous age with the new student age. Okay, and this way we are trying to collect the total value. This is again the same type of things we did already in our 20 days challenge. We are only trying to use that type of logic. With extra difference is that currently we are trying to collect the value using array. Now once your total age is calculated based on iterations completions, then on the outside of this for loop we can easily calculate the average value. And how we can calculate the average value? That is basically average is equal to total divided by n is basically total student number, right? So here you can see that we are actually getting the average value or average age of n number of student. Okay, so once this is done, then we can print this average value or average age just as a final statement like this. So after this if we can create a plain line, then here I am trying to print the average age, and whatever the age calculated under this variable, that will be printed here. Now one thing we have to do, definitely, that is the best practice. Once your scanner class activity is done, you have to close that scanner class instance. So we can see that under this for loop we are actually taking all this input using this scanner class instance, and finally once this for loop iterations is completed, then the scanner class instance is basically not needed. So that's why just after this for loop I just close this scanner class using sc.close syntax. Okay, so now save this file. Now our total program is done. If I now run this program, so you can see it asks me what is the student number, how many student, 3. Now the roll number, let's say first student 1 and its age is 17, then the second roll number and its age is, let's say, 10, and the third one, let's say, its age is 15. So you can see the older one is basically 17 whose roll number is 1, and the younger one is basically 10 whose roll number is 2. Now if I try to enter here, so you can see first time I am getting all the student roll number and age, then the roll number 1, he is basically older one whose age is 17, and roll number 2 is younger one and his or her age is 10. And the average, if you calculate 17 plus 10 plus 15 divided by 3, because 3 student, it is nothing but 14. So this is a simple way to create this problem statement or to implement this problem statement. Here the total thing we did, basically we try to create two array, try to collect their value, then based on that value we are trying to print them, and we are also trying to find out the maximum and minimum value between that student age array. Okay, and finally trying to find out the average and giving a combination statement here, what is the older age and what is the younger age, okay, and what is their roll number. So hope you understand this one. If not, then you just check this video again, one or two time again, and you can easily understand that one. But as you can see that all the logic we are trying to collect, which we already learned in previous classes. So if you not complete that class first, you have to go on that class, then you can understand the logic of maximum, minimum, or logic of average calculations. Let's catch in our next class.
I believe this video has helped you to understand about the topic. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe, click on the bell notifications and select all so that you don't miss any video from this channel.